figure out.
Welcome to Borrow My Belief, a podcast that's inspired to help you live from your heart. And today I have definitely got a guest who lives from their heart in a very different way. His name's Sam. I've not seen him for 3 years. I'm laughing because I'm thinking I have no idea what we're going to talk about. This is going to be a really, 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 really interesting conversation, I think.
I
Welcome, Sam.
what I so
I last saw you in Mexico. We were just talking nearly 3 years ago.
yeah, it feels like we were mentioning before we started the show. It feels like yesterday, and it also feels like lifetimes ago.
Yeah. And I think one of the last times I saw you, I was babysitting a cat for you in your apartment.
That's funny. It was little Sophia. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I loved babysitting that cat actually. That was just before I came back to the UK, just before I had a mini crisis in my life and had
Indeed.
to start again.
Yeah.
So, Sam, I mean, it's a big question, but tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I mean, this is the question. People tell me just to tell my story, and they're like, Sam, you should just tell your story. And uh, and so I don't know how far back we want to go in the storytelling, but yeah, I mean, I can say it's been a journey. It's definitely been a journey, and
Mm,
yeah, we'll see where this podcast goes. But I mean, today it's interesting, just like right now in this moment. One of the things we've chatted about is actually about the wound clearing, right? So actually finding the source of a trauma and then clearing it. And this was one of the things you and I connected on. This has came a long way since we last talked. I boiled it down to a science, and this is something that I've resisted doing, but mostly because it's been um, been or required that I need to be more public, because most of my life has been very private. I don't share a lot about what I do
mhm.
publicly. A lot of people they post their whole lives on Instagram and Facebook, and for me, I've kept that pretty quiet. I used it to just share some photos and things when I go on vacation, and and so this is a very interesting time, and the timing of this as well is very interesting as well, because it's, we're doing this podcast and it's at a time where a lot of things have shifted in me, and it's time to bring it out into the world. So I think the best summary I can give is this thing that I did for myself to fix myself, to heal myself, to see myself clearly, to see the truth of who I am, has become something I can't put to the side anymore. And I have taken this on and using some of the systems skills that I have to build systems for businesses. I'm building it so that it's scalable so it can reach more people. Outside of that, the general term that I use to describe myself is a consultant, because it lets me and allows me to do a lot of things. And have been working on an AI and automotive startup with a gentleman who's done four of these in the past, taking companies to over 5 billion in valuation. And he's been a friend of mine. We met working on a project in the past about 5 or 6 years ago, and he asked me to be a part of the team. I said, I can't say no. I know it's going to be a success because of your track record. So it's awesome to work with friends and people that you trust, that I trust, because most people can count those people on one hand. Typically, who do they really trust? Who could they put their lives in the hands of and trust that they're going to make the right decision for them? And thankfully, I've been able to gather quite a number of those. And we've gone through the trials and the tribulations, and they're still around. So I get to live every day working with people that I really appreciate and really enjoy. And then outside of that, I do consulting for different assets and projects, just different things that people need help with. So a little bit of a jack of all trades. Background, I was a mechanic for a little while, done carpentry as well. So kind of the hands-on, the mechanical approach has helped me to understand the non-physical universe in a way that's very tangible.
Yeah.
So taking the non-physical people see as, you know, wispy, for me, it's very real. And
Mm.
then that balances out the more physical third dimension stuff that I do. So it's been important to keep a foot in both worlds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess I know how this is going to go now, listening to you there. We're going to focus on the wound healing. But first of all, because that's where I reckon we're going to have a really, really great conversation around that, because that's where we match. That's how we did connect. And I still work on that every day, and my life gets better and better every single day without fail. And I can see that's what's happening with you as well. I can just feel it. But before we talk about that, let's talk about where it all started for you. Because before we came on this podcast, you said you had a conversation with your dad, and you said, Dad, I mean, if I remember rightly, you're going on a path and he might not understand it. And you decided to do something different in life. I mean, what I know is that you've lived in more than one country. I met you in Mexico. Where did it all start that you were going to live this alternate lifestyle?
Mhm. So I think maybe we will go back to the beginning of this life. One of the gifts, in a way, it's a gift now. It hasn't always been. Um, keep it to this life, but part of doing the work opens up remembrances of previous lives. So the process has a few different names. One version, which is more of a buzz word, is matrix deprogramming yourself from the matrix. Another one is the remembering process, because that basically sums it up. We're just trying to remember what we already know. We came
Mm,
into the Earth game, and the question I've always asked is, what am I doing here? And where is here?
mm,
So that was a lifelong quest for me to understand what this is and what do I do? What do I do with this? Who am I in this? So it's
mm,
been about remembering. And part of that has been about going backwards in time. And it just opens up. Things just open up after we clear the wounds. In other words, when I say clear, I just want to define that word if we're going to dive into this. And then I'll go into my story a little bit. But when I say clear, what I mean is seeing
mm,
the truth of when I started down this journey, down this road, on this journey, I realized that I needed to understand what the word healing meant. So, what is healing? So, that was question number one. And I couldn't find a good definition from somebody outside of me. So, I just created one, which is healing is to make conscious what you were previously unconscious to. Okay, so if you're unconscious of something, you make it conscious. That is the process of healing. So, in other words, anything that is unhealed is simply something that's sitting in the unconscious.
mm,
So, in this process, we're simply taking something that's unconscious, that's creating symptoms, and we're seeing the truth of it, which is what actually happened, not what our mind is saying, not what we're filling in the gaps, because we think that's how we would have been, but really just seeing the truth of it. And that's been the guiding principle for me is to see the truth.
So thinking
So
as
yeah.
you said that, I was thinking physical and psychological, because my healing's always been psychological. And for some people, it would be physical. It would, where I'm coming from, there might be somebody who they want to heal from eczema,
Yeah.
or there might be somebody like me who had depression.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the same goes for both.
Yeah. Or, and this is where the practical comes in, or one of the stories that I tell was very real. I was trying to get documents back from people, and I had 5 different parties and I was trying to get these documents back from, and they were like 5-10 minutes to fill these out and send back. And it was going on for an obscene amount of time. And I'm going, this is very strange. And I was getting frustrated and like, guys, can you please just do like, this will take a few minutes. Literally, this is holding everything else up. And I used this to go into the wound that I was feeling and
Mm.
sourced the wound, found the wound, cleared the wound, saw the truth of it. And literally that evening and the next morning, all the documents come in.
Yes, this happens with me all the time. If I'm, okay, already we're vibing, and I remember now the conversations that we had. If I'm having something in life that I'm quote unquote struggling with, and the normal way would be to blame the thing that's happening in my life, every time I come to myself, journal about it, meditate about it, and get to the core of what's going on in me, that thing on the outside resolves every single time. Sometimes like a miracle where people would have said it couldn't resolve.
Well, I have a deeper understanding of it now of what actually happens, which is really interesting. And it goes into mandala effects and
Hmm.
how we actually create the new earth, the new world that we all want.
Mm.
So there's a few bits and pieces we can go into the story of, how I sort of landed on what I'm here to do, which is a little bit obscene in terms of like largeness. Like it's in the realm of going to Mars, but I've been looking at who I'm talking about, his goals, and I'm like, maybe I need to make mine larger. But mine has been to build cities. And there was a strange, story that I didn't even understand at the time, why it was happening, but it just ended up unfolding and took me to this awareness of, oh, well, yeah, build cities. I kind of have the beginnings of that anyways with the construction mechanical background, all of that. So why don't we do this? Because this is what I want. This is what everybody says that they want, which is a place where they can live in harmony, live, and not even live in harmony, but not have the same problems that are consistently recurring and repeating due to the design of the space. And this is what we're talking about. A town model turns into a city, and everybody just crams in, and everything that they need is brought from outside. There's no self-sufficiency, there's no self-reliance, there's no sovereignty. So what do? Well, we got to go back to the old ways, but we've got all this technology now. So how do we incorporate both of them in a healthy way? And this is where the city design comes in, is consciously creating it from the ground up. So it has a carrying capacity, can sufficiently take care of so many people, and then, okay, well, it's full, or you have capacity limits and so forth. Well, we build another one that is similarly designed, so we're self-reliant but interdependent with each other. And
Mm.
this is, like cells operate the same way. You look at the microcosm and the macrocosm, this is how it operates. But because of a lack of planning or lack of forethought, and just pushing the old system forward, we have the world that we live in, which is always fixing something. And people have an allergy to the word, I don't know if you've noticed this, they have an allergy to the word fixing, right? A lot of people have an allergy. Oh, I don't want to be fixed. Because guess what? People are tired of fixing things because everything's always breaking. So there's always something to fix. We, as humans, and there's a bit of a tangent, but I want to make this point because it's really important. We as humans, there's nothing broken in us, right? We ourselves are perfect and complete. We are divine creator watching ourselves through different perspectives and different vantage points. The thing that, if there is something to fix or see the truth of, it is that which impedes our natural self from coming in and through the body into this third, fourth, fifth dimension, this creation space that we're in. And
Mm.
so that clear connection gets distorted or bounced around. And this is when we get into wounds and traumas and these basically distortions or recordings. And
Mm.
this is where that energy comes in, ping pongs around, and then comes out like gobbledygook. And then we feel bad because we're like, that's not how I want to be. But there was something filtering that clear connection. So we feel the clear connection, it comes out all weird. And then we're like, why did that happen? This has been my quest since I was about 5 years old. So going into the story.
Well, let's do that then. Let's start at the beginning. Since you were 5 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I was five, I went to kindergarten.
Hmm.
Maybe it was like 4.5, but like five-ish. And I went to kindergarten, and my dad was he walked me there, and he drops me off, and he's there for a few moments. The teacher's like, okay, time to go. So he goes to leave, and I feel his energy leaving. And my little 5-year-old self has this moment that that basically, you know, like you're the person who's been with you since birth, essentially.
Mhm.
Father, this time it was the father. He leaves, and I feel it go have this panic attack. All of my senses that I didn't even know that I had at that point turn on, and I can feel everybody, uh,
Mm.
hear their thoughts, and it's just noise. Like I look across the room and there's a kid, and I can hear what he's thinking, and I can feel what he's feeling, and the response I have is like, why is everybody so mean? But it was just so much noise, and I didn't know what to do with that. And it basically stayed like that until I was in the range of like 12 to 14. Things started to shift. Maybe that was like hormones and things changing. But when I was about 14, I started to go to the gym. We had a gym in the basement of the high school I went to, and I started to go to the gym, and that did something, helped me find the I and make sense of all of this noise. Like, where am I in this storm of confusion? But prior to that, I didn't really have much of a personality. So, what does that mean? Personality for me, it was kind of interesting because someone would say, "What's your favorite food?" And I'd say, "I don't know." "What's your
Mm.
favorite music?" "I don't know." Everything. "What's your favorite color?" "I don't know." All of them. Like my favorite word was "I don't know" because I didn't know how to pick something, because I couldn't determine what like was. Favorite means you have to understand what like is. And then favorite is just a higher degree of liking. So I had to reconstruct this mentally to figure out what my body or feelings or emotions or mind felt like, which constituted liking, right? So try to think of that. Most kids just arrive at, oh, I like this, I want this. For me, I didn't have that. It wasn't a natural thing for me,
Mm.
because I was very dispersed.
Have
And
you heard of the telepathy tapes?
was that?
Telepathy tapes. Have you heard of the podcast that's all about the telepathy tapes?
No, no, I haven't. No.
Okay, well, that's one for afterwards. Anybody that's listening, it's a great podcast. It's all about kids that can hear,
Mhm.
that are telepathic,
Yeah.
particularly with their mothers. It's a
Yeah.
really good podcast to listen to.
Yeah. I had this with a partner years later where we would have conversations up here. We'd be away from each other and having conversation up here, upstairs, I call it. And then we would get into physical space. I'd come home and we'd start, or well, continue the conversation that we had.
And that's going to sound bizarre to some people, and I've no doubt that this whole podcast is going to already. I realize now we're going what was going to sound bizarre to people, but I would invite people to open their mind because whilst in my book, I kept things really quite practical, and in my teachings, I keep things really quite practical. I do have a chapter at the end that says if you want to dive deeper and go woo woo, because the deeper I dive, the more I realize that this is all valid. It's all valid, and just because I mean science is catching up anyway, but just because there isn't a scientific backup doesn't mean it's not real, right? And
That's the
there are
thing.
things that we didn't think were real decades ago that are very real now.
Mhm. Sorry to jump in when you're speaking there, Joanne. There is actually science,
Yeah.
which is interesting. And there's a guy named Robert Edward Grant, who has published a lot of the science, and it explains how consciousness works,
Yeah.
how the external is actually a mirror of what's happening internally.
Yeah.
We understand that, then it's pretty hard to be a victim.
Hmm.
Really hard to be a victim. So, and I had a friend who was talking to me about frame, like frame control. And I thought, why would I want to put myself into a box? Why don't I just become who I naturally am and use the external as information to see what's going on internally? And then if I don't like what's showing up externally, I change it internally and then it gets reflected back to me.
Yes, every time. If you can master that there, what you've just said, in my opinion, then you can create your life any way that you want it.
Yeah. And for me, it's been about removing, but how you remove it is you see it, the distortions, those wounds, those traumas that want to replay in an effort to keep us safe. That's
Mm-hmm.
what they're doing. They're keeping us alive. It's that reptilian part of the brain. It's the fight or flight, fawn, freeze response. It's just trying to keep us alive.
Yeah.
So if we can see that, if we can truly see what's happening in that, we realize, oh, this is a recording. This is a past event. Is this who I want to be today? And even if you do that, there's still a wrestling match between the two. I had this happen just the other day, which spurred my digging into one of my wounds yesterday and clearing that. And part of the reason why, and you guys don't know this listening to this, I had to message Joanne. I'm like, Joanne, I need a little extra time. I'm negotiating time and space right now because every time and we haven't even gotten into the story, but I'll just mention this because I know my story, so it's not as interesting for me. This stuff is more interesting.
We're gonna get there. I'm gonna guide you back into your story, don't you worry.
When we understand that all of this is literally it's a game, it's a feedback system. It becomes, yeah, it becomes again, the closest thing I can point at is a video game. It becomes like a video game and you have your avatar. So every time, and going back to what I was mentioning, every time you clear something or one of these wounds, you see the truth of it, it pops. The data moves from the survival recording database, and that information of what happened goes into memory. We can still access it, but without all of the symptoms that are there. It just becomes something that we experience and we can talk about and we can feel the happy, the sad, but it's not traumatic. It's not trying to take over.
Yeah.
And from that place, we rehabilitate the memory system. But when
So
that happens, there's a lot of things that we've learned that were built on top of this foundation of the wound or the trauma. And and so one of the most interesting phenomenons that I have happen, and I'm partly in it now, which is why the timing of this is very interesting. Uh, Coming back to this universe, part of my substrate left yesterday. Part of this identity that I had before left, like the onion analogy, left. And so there's a bit of an Eckhart Tolle type of feeling that I have. And I'm kind of bringing myself into the physical. I'm not fully embodied as I would, quote unquote, normally be today. So I'm having to consciously bring myself back because right now I just want to drift. I literally just want to be in space, and this happens typically afterwards for a few days. So my calendar's keeping me here at this point. I don't trust myself today to remember it. So when it pops in, it goes on paper or in the calendar, and then I just know to check the calendar. That's how I'm getting things done.
just put it into a little bit of context and to unpick that, and then I'm going to take you back to the gym when you were a teenager. So first of all, what you're talking about, your way of living, is the way I live, but my version of it. And I find it very enjoyable. I find that you liken it to a video game. I liken it and I agree, it is like a video game, and this is the avatar, this human being that I'm occupying. And I
Mhm.
can sit on the seat of consciousness, and witness this avatar as if I'm not it. And some people might find that strange, but that comes through meditation and various different things. And I find it really enjoyable, and it reminds me of maybe a 2-year-old toddler, because the more I let go and the more I allow life to be uh, and be curious, the more enjoyable it becomes. And the more I do these processes, my own version of what you're talking about, the more enjoyable life becomes. And what I liken these processes to is clearing unresolved energy in my system. So something happened when I was younger, or you might say a past life or another life. And I know we're getting into other realms there, but there could be people listening who believe in that. It, each time I clear an unresolved energy or resolve it, I feel lighter. And then there's an integration period, which is what I'm assuming what you're in now. This integration period is there's the unresolved energies being resolved, and then there's a recalibration of the system. And in that recalibration, part of you's died, like an ego and energy has died, and there's some grief often, and there's, like you said, living out there because you're learning to be something different. And I suppose a good way to describe it, I would say, would computer software when you get an upgrade. And it's funny because I've just looked up on my screen and my Mac's actually asking me to do an upgrade. And that again, even if we want to go into that, we could go in all sorts of tangents. That again is the billboard of life. Everything on the outside is reflecting the inside. So for me now, I've reached a point where when I look up and I see upgrade on my screen, that's not a surprise, and that takes me back to it becomes enjoyable. And it's like being a toddler, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to touch on what you mentioned about the upgrade piece,
Yeah.
because my belief is that we're already upgraded.
Yeah.
We're already fully upgraded. The
Yeah.
issue, if there is an issue, is, well, there's two issues. One issue is that we're not at that part of the story yet.
Mm.
So how some people believe that there's multiple timelines and you're moving from one to another and you're doing this whole jumping thing. For me, I believe that the story's already written, right? And that we move into different octaves. But one of the things I've realized, and I've talked to many people who are they're you could say just spiritually advanced, and we kind of land on this point, which is that when you realize that you have ultimate choice in your life, that you choose whatever happens to you, there's something interesting that happens in that moment that you make that realization or shortly after, which is that you also have no choice and that it's happening.
Mm.
We can get into these, deliberations and arguments about which is correct. And what I've learned is that it's both. It absolutely is both, because we live in a paradox. And that's why one of my companies is called Paradox Consulting, because I found that when you land on something that is both true and untrue, or both left and both right at the same time, you're landing on something that goes beyond. It's like a singularity, and the
Mm.
brain can't quite comprehend it, but you feel it. And that's where truth resides, you could say, where the singularity collapses. And that's the place where, if you look at any of these holy books, the Bhagavad Gita at the same time, it talks about action without attachment, or actionless action. Well,
Mm.
you think about that for a moment, it doesn't make any sense, but you feel it.
Yeah.
What is actionless action? Well, you're being moved and you're watching yourself. It just flows through you. And every tradition has it. The way, right? The Tao, the river that you get into. In the Bible, it talks about so and so went out and the Holy Spirit was with him. So and so went out and the Holy Spirit was not with him. Well, what are we talking about? This could happen in everyday life. One of my companies, I used to train my drivers to get all green lights. There's a delivery company. And so how do you get all green lights? Well, you find the flow of traffic. There's a place where you're supposed to be. And if you go too fast, you miss it. If you go too slow, you miss it. So you find that space, and literally cars will move out of the way where you need to go. Lights will change. You can practice this. You can practice feeling it. Um,
How?
yes,
I want to know how to do that.
it's just in Asia too. One of the things that I really enjoy doing is riding a motorcycle, and some people are just petrified of this. And I can understand that from a logical perspective, but it's like a school of fish. You just feel it. And you can feel those moments where like you're going through and you're weaving through traffic. And then there's a moment where you might have a doubt. And so you don't move with it. And then you pull back and then you feel the pain of missing it, of missing that move. And now you have to wait and wait until that space opens up, again, another space in the river, and then you move into it. But you remind yourself not to hesitate, to just trust it. And that's the simplest place to be, is when you're in that river and you're trusting it. The
And
problem behind it.
that's if I live life like that, that's life's great when I live life like that. And it is a feeling, it isn't a thought.
Yes. Yes, exactly. This becomes a happening. Alan Watts talks about this all the time. He's got some audios, and he goes, when you realize, all you're doing is watching it.
Mm.
You're just watching yourself. So I think the reason why I went to, you think back on like the school, the education that we had growing up, a lot of it is, we don't use it in actual life. But one of the things that I have to say is the most important for me is something that I learned in English class, English language class, and it was about foreshadowing. And the teacher talked about how the author would foreshadow what was about to happen. Okay, well, what are they talking about? Well, if, say the main character is Billy, and Billy has a dog, and out of nowhere, Billy's dog dies, you're like, where did that come from? That just came out of nowhere. But if in the previous chapter, the mother's talking about how when she was young, her dog passed away, got hit by a car or something, and then you think about, then you go back to a previous chapter before that, and Billy has a fear that he expresses, and he's like, "Oh, I love this dog so much. I hope I can keep him forever," or something like that. And you see the foreshadowing happen one chapter by the next. It might take 3 or 4 chapters of foreshadowing to make that situation make sense, where it's not abrupt, where it's not just coming out of nowhere. And our lives work like this. So if we can take a step back from this avatar and just go back here for a moment and just watch and listen, like even the words that I'm saying right now, there's a foreshadowing that's happening. So after this, I'll listen to this and I'll go, oh, interesting. And I'll listen to the words, and there might be some little slips that come out, some little Freudian slips, but they're going to tell me something about what's going to happen in my own journey, in my own life. And so if you just listen to yourself when you're talking to people as you're going through life, you watch yourself, that's how you can predict what's going to happen, because there's a microcosm, there's a macrocosm. And then there's the big picture, which our smaller lives also model as well. And the Mandelbrot set, the fractal understanding of the universe of what we live in. It's little and big. The little is in the big and the big is in the little. So what's happening externally in the world and the global political scene is also happening locally. If you watch your life, you see the model of it. You see what's happening. It's just a reflection inside and outside. So it's yeah. Anyways, full of wonder.
I'm going to take you back to you've been at school, you've been really open, and then you found the gym. Did you say 12 years old or something?
It's not 14.
Teen. And then that brought you, I'm presuming, into your body.
Yeah.
And then where from there then? What happened from there?
So after the next thing that happened after that was the realization that I didn't have to do certain things, that I could choose to do this or choose to do that. before that, it was like a river, almost like the river of expectation, you could say, like what school wants you to do in certain ways, to act and be and all of that. But when I connected in with myself, and it may have just been that I had more testosterone running through my body, and that's what anchored me, but it created a sense of I. And the realization was that I can choose what I want to do and what I don't want to do. And that was a big, big breakthrough. So that happened, that kind of progressed. I think the next big shift was getting a car, right?
Mhm.
For most boys, when they're 16, they get a car. That was a huge freedom thing. I lived in my first car. There was a main street, my hometown. We just drive up and down. All my extra money went to gas. Uh,
Mhm.
so that was a big freedom thing. And basically tried to get out of my hometown after that. Like had a number of experiences. First girlfriend happened after that. Almost had a child. Um, there was a miscarriage. She had a miscarriage on Christmas Day. Interestingly enough, there was definitely mixed emotions that day, and ended up, yeah, within a few years after that, I ended up leaving that city and just making my way towards the mountains. So I was in the middle of Canada and kept just making my way west. And yeah, there's a whole story we can get in there into that.
So you saw that you didn't have to live life through expectation, is what you said. So it's actually
Sure.
through a process of doing things differently.
Yeah, it wasn't even that I consciously thought
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm doing this. Like now I see it, but it was just more like I was in the spiral, in the energy, just trying to figure out what I was doing there, what was going on, trying to survive, really. I mean, I battled depression since I was young, since I was about 5 years old. And most of that depression came from the overwhelm of just feeling other people's emotions.
Mm.
Yeah. So
So
that's one of the things, even on the website, I have my own testimonial on there.
yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm a student and I'm a practitioner of
Yeah.
it. And I have a problem that this is the system that I use. And I think a lot of people, they teach things like there's sort of this epidemic of coaches who want to be a coach and they're like 22 years old. And myself and colleagues, when we hear this, we're like, what are you going to coach people on? Like, what life experience do you have to coach people on? You're still in the middle of it. So it's kind of this running irony. Maybe they can teach the book knowledge, but really, in my mind, the only reason why I opened this up to the public was because I had succeeded with it. And I think if you succeed, there's a different level that you can transmit something to others at. It's if you've arrived, you can tell a person which path to take. And one of the early teaching models that I used was something called the complexity threshold. Okay, this is something you can take from this podcast, take into your life. The complexity threshold is this. So you have like a line here. I mean, we can use this line in the screen. So we have this line here. And right here is where you want to get to. Okay. This is the place where you've arrived, you understand the subject. But when you're here, right? So let's say this line is where you start. So let's say you want to be a cook and you're like, oh, this is easy. You just heat up a pan and you put things in it and you make something, right? So you start learning about ingredients, you start learning about all the different flavor palettes and where things come from and how that affects the taste and temperatures and all this stuff. And it goes from a simple idea to this thing that just expands. And you get to this point here. It's interesting using this as a backdrop. You get to this point here, and every time, I can basically say every time, there's a moment where there's panic. It's
Mhm.
overwhelm. And the thought is something like, how am I ever going to understand all of this? this is just so much. How am I ever going to make sense of this? And this is the moment where most people back off and they pick another subject and they start this whole process again. But they never reach mastery over here because they don't go past this threshold. So if you understand this, you push past. You're like, okay, this is an indicator that I'm almost there. And you
Yeah,
move past the threshold. And somewhere around here, when you move past it, uh, it's like your body, your mind computes a formula, like
yeah,
an algorithm that lets you understand everything else with maybe like one or two principles. And that's essentially not, I'm not saying you have mastery of the subject, but you can understand that subject. And these principles are what crosses over into other fields. So if you master one field, like how you have, Michael Jordan, he does business, he does other things. You get all these athletes, they go into business, they do really well. You get people who've mastered something, they take that and turn it into something else because they've gone past this threshold here and
yeah.
they've got the algorithms that translate into other industries.
The formula, isn't it? I've found that well, my whole thing's always been about manifestation. And when I get to the point where I believe that whatever I'm trying to manifest is never going to manifest in a million years because everything's just so far away from it, that's the point where I usually surrender and give up. And that's the point where it usually happens, the
Yeah,
very thing
yeah,
at that point. And
yeah.
so to me, that pushing through at the end, in my experience, has often been letting go, actually, letting go of what it is that I want. And then miraculously it turns up somehow. I don't,
Yeah.
every time.
It makes sense. You
Yeah.
can push, you can just relax into it, but it's happening. I think when you reach this point where the overwhelm hits,
Yeah.
and then you surrender, whatever your process is,
Yeah.
but you just keep going.
Yeah. Just keep going, but let go of attachment to what it should be.
Yeah. The stress and the overwhelm is an indicator that you're almost there.
Yeah, always. So you went off to the mountains, Sam. I'm bringing you back to your story. You've
Uh,
gone. You've come back. You went off to the mountains, and there'll be people asking, how did you survive? How did you fund yourself? I mean, my daughter's been on my podcast,
yeah.
and she arrived in Guatemala with I think she arrived with something like a fiver in her pocket, and she was fine.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think some people, they have this desire to do this type of thing.
Mm.
And we put a lot of emphasis on money, don't we, in society, particularly in the Western society. How did you did you have fear? Did you ever go back? I mean, I went off and I went back into the corporate world and then left it again.
Yeah.
I tried to do a backwards turn and go back to my old life, and it just that was after Mexico. It
Yeah.
just didn't work. I just ended up, my soul just was not satisfied. What happened with you? What kept you going? Because I know you've got some really great stories.
It's so interesting talking about this because I feel so detached from it. Like it's almost like a story that happened to somebody else that I was
Yeah.
watching.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It can be that similar for me as well. And the reason I think that it can be like that is, this is my theory, is all that unresolved energy that I've processed through my system is no longer within me. So that personality that I no longer hold
Mhm.
is the one that had that experience. I know that sounds so. Last night, for example, I was sat with a bunch of people. I'd been doing a collaboration with cacao and different things in a shop in Glastonbury, and I was saying that I was moving on and doing different things, and we were having a great evening. And I showed them some photographs of me from 2017 when I lived a completely different life. I was still married. I had my big house. I was living a completely different lifestyle. And they didn't recognize me. They thought it looked like a completely different person. So even physically, they didn't recognize me. And it's exactly the same when I look back. I mean, I've got my daughter and my grandson here where I am now, and we obviously all lived in that life together, not my grandson, but when I look back, it's like, oh, who, I don't even recognize myself. My daughter said that she had to grieve that version of me. It is a bit weird, isn't it? But for the people who are listening, they might be about to embark on that journey and they're in that version.
This is a good point. This is a really good point. So I think, so going back to principles,
Hmm.
and there have been phrases that have repeated in the back of my mind in these moments of struggle, in
Mm.
these moments of confusion. And a lot of times it's been a desire for relief. Like what I talked about earlier in this conversation was about the kind of the method of the deprogramming. This is like the end of the story, or like the current uh, where we're moving things from into the future. But what brought me to this place of now, or this avatar to this place of now, has been uh, despair and a desire for relief from that despair. So we hear this a lot, I think, even more now, that our greatest struggles are the source of our greatest gifts. And for me, it was, again, I mentioned depression since I was young. Like I'm a different being now because I went to the source of the pain. But it wasn't always like that. It was despair and depression and overwhelm and fear of people and fear of what would happen if I speak up, speak out. You know, a lot of my early childhood was about speaking out, and I would see something and it would just make sense. And then I would share that understanding, and then I would be criticized and made fun of and put down because what I thought was different than the textbook says. But for me, it was just obvious. And so there was a part of me that trusted what I was understanding, but I wouldn't say anything.
Mm.
So, and it's interesting too, connecting into that, because this is probably one of the most important parts of my journey to get across is that today, like today, I have a clarity that's more than what I've ever had prior to this. And I mentioned earlier about just wanting to kind of go into just to drift, like Eckhart Tolle on a park bench. That's why I call this mode Eckhart Tolle mode, because it's literally how it feels. And the first time it happened was just wild. Like not, I had no desire to go left or to go right. I could just stare at a tree for hours. And it's not a normal state because we're always being pushed one way or the other. There's a fear, there's a prod. And so for the early part of my life, I knew that I needed to get away from my hometown because it was very low consciousness, you could say. It was just, I was just getting injured all the time by different things, by people, system. Like that was where I had first almost had a child. It was just, it seemed to be the place where I gathered trauma. Or another way to put it was that the trauma that I had from previous lifetimes manifested. Okay.
Mm.
Come into this life with the same traumas we had in the previous life. So this is one thing, if anybody out there's listening and they're thinking about, you know, hey, maybe I don't want to be here anymore, right? Maybe I should just end it. Well, my message to you is that you're still going to have to deal with things in the next life that you're dealing with today. And so if you have a decent situation, maybe get a grasp, look at what we've talked about here and understand that there's a recording playing. I'm just saying this for some reason. Maybe this will affect one person, who knows? But it's important to understand that we can't run away from our problems, but we can understand them better. And by understanding them better, by going into that which we fear, we realize that the demon, the dragon, isn't as scary as we thought. And I think it was Mark Twain that he says that I've suffered many slings and arrows, but most of them never happened.
Hmm.
In other words, what happens in our mind, we take something, we add our story to it, or it triggers one of our traumas, or many of our traumas, they replay like recordings, and we believe that because that's our experience. And this is one of these things. I realize I might be a little bit further ahead in terms of the personal development movement as I'm talking about these recordings, but it's a conversation that needs to happen, because when we understand this, for me, it just made everything make sense. It wasn't easy to go through, but it made my confusing reality, the committee almost in my mind, which were these programs running, it made it make sense. So bringing that back to the story, leaving my hometown, I felt I needed to get out of here. And I kept going closer to the mountains, and I ended up in Alberta and Calgary and Edmonton. I ended up spending a bunch of time there. And at one point in there, I went to the Philippines, and I dove in the ocean. I got my scuba, my PADI open water scuba certification there, and we had maybe 5 foot visibility. And the guy who took me there, this was after a typhoon, by the way. It had terrorized Typhoon Raming, if anybody knows what that was, in the Philippines. Like destroyed a lot of stuff. And we were out on the island that it basically, washed over. And there was a guy out there who was known for teaching scuba, and I wanted to learn. And we went out in the boat and had maybe 5 foot visibility. And what I didn't mention is that I did this because I was afraid of water. Right. I had some weird fear of like being out in the middle of the ocean, getting eaten by something. So it was like a irrational fear. And I thought, well, if I want to get over this, maybe I should be responsible for other people's lives. So then I'm forced to get over the fear. And that's where the whole scuba thing came from. So I did that. And I remember thinking, and I was feeling the fear, and I thought, let me ask this guy some questions. So I said, how long have you been doing this? And he's like, oh, I don't know, 25 years, something like that. I'm like, okay. And then I just remember thinking, okay, just do what he does. Then I won't die. And yeah, that experience, there's something about entering the water. I was just talking to another guy about this. They have an opportunity to go diving. I ended up, long story short, going to the Sunshine Coast in Vancouver and getting my scuba instructor license. I was a master scuba instructor, and went to Playa del Carmen, where you and I ended up meeting. But this was in 2008, and I was 6 days a week at a 5-star, 4-star resort teaching scuba to the tourists. And there was something about that, being in the water, living life, drinking my fresh orange juice every day, that did something. It changed something. And there's something about this land that brings you back to yourself.
Mm.
It brought me back to myself. It's the reason I came here after the COVID thing happened and they were locking down Canada. And the reason I came back here was because of one of my roommates back from 2008. We'd still retained a friendship, and he was from Canada as well. We met in Mexico, but he said to me, "You were the happiest that I knew you." He's like,
Mm.
"Sam, the happiest I knew you when you lived in Mexico, in Playa.
Mm.
Just get out of Canada." Canada's a shithole. Sorry, Canada. That was our conversation. He goes, Canada's a shithole. Get out of Canada and just put your feet on the ground.
And you're still there now.
Sense.
Remember when I met you, you said to me, I'm gonna wait it out here for 5 years.
I said I need a place that I can call home for the next 5 years.
Did, and I met you in 2021.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Hmm.
there's something about this land that, because it has both. It has the dark, it has the light. I mean, Mexico is very connected to death. So you
Yeah.
stream, you got masculinity, you've got femininity, there's something really interesting about this land, but for me, it really, it brought up my stuff constantly. And because I had this process, I was able to work through it and just
Mhm.
become lighter and lighter and lighter. But it didn't always feel like that. As the stuff comes up, as a new wound would come to the surface for me to see, it felt just as painful.
Yeah.
But I had this, as I mentioned, I sort of alluded to, as I foreshadowed earlier in the video,
Hmm.
things that I said was that there were these phrases that would play in my mind and that would keep me going. And one of them was the truth shall set you free.
Mm.
One of them, one of the phrases. And so when I was in the depths of the darkness and I didn't know where to go or what to do, I just heard the truth shall set you free. Keep going. And so I would continue going into the darkness. Eventually I would see whatever I needed to see the truth. And
Mhm.
I have it refined now, but this is just a general idea. I would see the truth, it would pop, and I would be free of that wound,
Mm.
simply.
It's really interesting because a few things I was thinking while you were talking there. I've got a client right now. She's a superstar, and she's just about to face something off that she knows she needs to do, and she's known it since January, and here we are in July, and she's just about at that point, but she's been at that point for coming up for 7 months now, and I know that on the other side of that, it's going to be, oh, I did this, and she's going to feel wonderful. So that's the first thing that came up. She's reached that, and she's delaying it. She's kicking the can down the road. But once she's done it, she's going to grow so much in confidence. But she's going to have to feel, and normally it's the feeling and facing ourselves that we're avoiding, facing the truth. You said earlier on in this podcast, once you realize all this stuff, it's almost impossible. Well, it is impossible to be a victim, right?
Mhm.
So you have to face yourself, don't you? And the other thing is, I was remembering when I met you. I don't know exactly when I met you, but I do. Maybe ecstatic dance. I don't know, but and you had a friendship with my daughter first, but I remember when I met you, I was already at about year two of being floored with emotion. I mean, this doesn't happen anymore at all. Not even a single. I don't get it at all anymore. But I was floored with emotion so much, and had been for a couple of years up until this point. So much so that I was in this beautiful place in Mexico, and I couldn't leave my apartment before noon. I was just, when I would wake up in the morning, the motion was crippling, and I would just lie on the floor. And prior to that, I was in Glastonbury. Glastonbury is a little bit similar in that you face yourself. They call it the Hall of Mirrors here in
Mhm.
Glastonbury. And when I met you, we resonated. I'd listened to a podcast. I'd actually listened to a YouTube thing with Oprah Winfrey and Michael Beckwith about the dark night of the soul.
Mhm.
And he'd said to her that when you're in the dark night of the soul, depression, you feel like it's going to last forever. And one question to ask yourself was, if this is going to last forever, what one quality could I bring to my life that would see me through it? But if this was going to last for the rest of my life, and I remember saying to myself, the one thing that could see me through this, if it's going to last the rest of my life, is connection. And if I can
Mhm.
just connect with one person a day, this will see me through for the rest of it. I mean, I honestly believed I was going to feel like that for the rest of my life. And I actually walked out and bumped into you that day,
Yeah.
and
This-
you were on a bike, and you know what happened. We went to a juice bar, we talked about aliens, we did a process, and that's how we ended up, we've not talked about aliens on this podcast, but that's how we ended up connecting and having a friendship. But I look back now and I thank God that I had the kind of internal compass that kept saying to me, you've got to feel these feelings, Joanne. It's really important. It's really important that you cry. It's really important that whatever comes up, no matter how crippling it is, feel it. And I did, and I did, and I did, and I never thought I would get through it. And I actually wake up now, some mornings, not every morning, with so much joy. It's I could feel, I could pinch myself with gratitude, but more than that, what's happened for me is I don't really care what life looks like anymore because I'm so fulfilled inside. And Eckhart Tolle talks about this. The day comes where you don't really want the thing anymore, and then finally you get it. So we go, it's really interesting. I don't yearn for anything. I don't want anything. Of course, I have dreams, of course. And because I feel so fulfilled and peaceful, more importantly, peaceful, I'm
Mhm.
happy in the present moment. And it was worth all that feeling that I went through.
I think you said something really important there. A number of important things is your compass was telling you to just go connect with somebody.
Yeah, yeah,
And what you mentioned about not being able to leave the house
yeah,
before noon, I laughed because I had the same.
yeah. Well, that's how we connected. Because I said to you, I can't get out of the house before noon, and you went, "Oh, let's go for a juice then." That's normal, you said.
We were both in the I don't know what to call it. We were both in the same machine that was beating us up.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's what playa was for me. It was just this, I don't know, just constant. And then just living here, which is only an hour away from playa, I tell people like you yeah, playa is like probably X what this is.
yeah.
And no, I'm like, oh yeah, this is nothing. This is nothing. Okay, go to playa.
But it's really interesting you should say that, Sam, though, because I've lived in Glastonbury twice.
Yeah.
The first time I lived in Glastonbury, it was like that. And I live in Glastonbury now and it's not. It's me. I vibe with different people. I do different things. It's a completely different experience, yet I live in the same place.
It is interesting. I'm going to be going back to my hometown here in the next few months,
Yeah.
and I'm excited to see what that's like because
Action is.
when I started this journey in 20, oh man, it would have been like 2014. I think the first wound that I cleared was in around like 2014. The first
Mm,
2 years, just to give you like a time estimate, the first one took about 2 years to clear, and because I didn't know what I was looking for. The next one took about 4 months. The next one was down to like 2 months, and then I got it down to about a month. So like the first four, they took a long time.
yeah.
And I have a count. I'm over 60 that I've cleared now.
Wow.
But that also just I've also been around a long time, and that just shows how much damage I've taken in all of these. Much more, it's going to be a much easier case than me. And I didn't know what I was doing at the time because I was the scientist and I was the guinea pig. So for anybody else, wanting to go through the process, it's going to be a lot simpler. Uh,
Yes. So talk about your business, Sam, because you said this was, we connected, I don't know how long ago, and asked you to come on my podcast. Was it a few months ago? You said that this is,
like 6 months, I think, when we first talked.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah. You said that this is divine timing. So tell us about your business. I'm going to pop your website. I
Hmm.
presume there's a way they can contact you, the viewers, through your website.
Yeah, for sure. There's contact and all of that stuff, and got some of the socials that
And
as
you're going to change the picture of there, aren't you? I've got a testimonial in there. You
we'll update because the time it took, it was a long time. And I remember when we connected and you were like, okay, I just finally got out of the house. We're like, okay, well, let's go for a drink. We grabbed some sort of fruit smoothie or something and we sat down. and you're telling me what was going on. And I said, well, let's just go into it.
Yeah, you did.
For us, because again, we both know what we're doing. It took like 20, 25 minutes or
In
something.
a restaurant, didn't we? I mean,
Yeah.
I can do a process really quite quickly now.
It's quiet and, it's like an actual
Yeah.
environment, but we just did it at the restaurant.
Yeah.
I remember like walking you through it, and I still remember what felt like because the energy came off of you when
Yeah.
it and I swear I could see like the cartoon wavy lines coming on. It was like you're looking into the distance and there's a mirage and it's sort of just coming off of you.
Oh gosh, that's really interesting. So, just to give a little bit of, to round this whole thing off, to give a little bit of information to anybody who's interested, because I mean, we've talked about a lot, but the main thing is about wounds and trauma and healing. And I'm sure anybody watching can see that we've both improved our lives, if you want to put it that way. Um, so for anybody that's interested, can you give like a synopsis of what it is that you offer
Yeah.
and like what they might be looking for and what to expect?
Yeah. So the first thing I'll say is that it's not for everybody.
Mm,
That's one of the things that I had to learn is that it's not for everybody.
mm,
My mission here or my driver is a little bit different than other people. Some people they want the release. So, some people go the NLP route, some people go these different routes. Some people will do the morning routines. I was one of those guys. I had a 300-point morning routine just to be okay, which worked until something would trigger me. And I realized that for me, this was going to be my last lifetime, and I needed something that really got to the root of it.
mm.
And I didn't want to just keep repeating the same pattern, having the same wounds come up. I wanted to wake up and feel good. That was my goal. I just wanted to wake up and feel good. So first thing I'll have to say is it's not for everybody, because it means turning and looking at that which we have been accustomed to moving away from.
Yeah,
Everything in this world, let's just say 90% of the methods that you see out there are about soothing or moving away from the pain.
yeah,
So, and it for me, I would say it worked temporarily until my soul wanted to clear this stuff. And
mm,
so if you're someone whom you feel a call and it really wants this stuff, you want to see the truth of what's going on and also know who you are by learning who you're not, we go into the wound and we see what's there. And
yeah,
so I mentioned the first few took a long time to clear. It's down to anywhere from like 1, 2, 3 hours, maybe, but it's happening a lot faster. And so basically what happens is there's a little mini course where I go through the anatomy of a trauma, anatomy of a wound. It's an online course that you go through, and that gives you the background for what it is that we'll be doing. And then to clear or to pop or remove whatever the first trauma is that's coming up can take it's usually like 2 sessions. The first one we're navigating, we're going in, we're getting used to the terrain, we're getting some ahas, some breakthroughs. There's where most coaches end with the aha and the realization and the seeing of a different perspective or the reframe. That's just where we start.
yeah,
And then usually it's the second session where we pop it, where we see the truth. Everything makes sense. You get the cartoon wavy lines that come off and the laughter, and there's like this clearing phenomenon that happens. And then there's a few days of integration where like this is the state that I'm in. I don't know if you've seen me in the video, but I'm in and I'm out a little bit. You're It's almost a weird feeling because you can just slip into no thoughts really easy. That becomes your natural state. But in that space of clarity, this is where the possibilities lie. So we alternate. So in the program that I offer, we alternate from doing the clearing. So first we're actually gathering the data, like how you're feeling. And there's a notebook process. We use that information to do the session, to go in. You get to see what's going on in that terrain, in the scene where this first started. You get to see the truth. It's all about you seeing it. I can't do it for you. I'm your guide. I'm just guiding you to the places that you need to see. I'm there with you. And then from that, there's the clear, or where it releases. Then there's the integration that happens for a few days. And then after that, it's now an orientation of what do you want to do with your life. And we do sort of an alignment process where we're going to take that expanded space and connect you to your purpose, your mission. Because now you're going to have more clarity in terms of like, why are you here? What are you doing? And life and success in life is all about alignment. It's, I would say it's 100% about alignment. And when you're aligned, like you look at the guys who have done really well in the world that are basically running things, they're aligned to whatever that mission is. And if you're not aligned, this is where you get all these different results because you're trying to fit into other people's boxes. What this process does is it brings you into your own box until you eventually shed the boxes altogether. But it brings you into alignment with your soul. That's the main thing. This is why it's called sovereign origin. It brings you back to your origin, which, when you see that's a whole other story. But you and me are, well, we joke now, some of us who've had these experiences, we say I and I, I and I went to the store. I and I went to da 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 da, because it's you see it, you experience it, you realize that there's just different perspectives having this experience.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm going to put the link in the description below here. And the reason I've kind of got no words just now is because what you've just described is what I've gone through over and over and over again. It's not just a one-time thing. It's different areas. It's different. Yeah. It's the way I live my life.
This is exactly it. It becomes something that you carry with you. I literally have I have a journal, and so this is my journal, and in it I have this little red book here, which is where, for some reason, I use red because maybe it represents survival. But this is where I take my notes when a wound comes up. I take the notes, and there's a way to organize the page. I have a template that I send to you, and you take the notes, and it's
a process.
It's something that, honestly, I mean, if everybody would have this understanding, I just imagine where we could go. Like, when I say this, I think a lot of people who have figured some things out say this, which is, this is just a starting point, and this is the conversation I see that needs to happen in this realm of personal healing and development, because you've got this epidemic of coaches out there who are teaching things that they're learning themselves, which is great. There's always somebody that they can help, but there's something to be said about someone who's like crossed over that threshold and is like, okay, this is the way to go. And if you
said it earlier, it's about going backwards in time and being willing to face yourself and face the uncomfortable.
It's always about, so I mean, and this is part of what you get in the pre-course, is that there's a little bit of deprogramming in there, because we're still there. You have new age movement information, you have religious information, you have just the cultural information, and a lot of that stuff sounds good. It sounds good, but where's the step two? Just, it sounds good. Like, I'll give you an example. If you're angry about something that somebody else is doing, that means it's in you.
Yeah.
Okay, that's step.
Absolutely.
What do you do with that? So it's in
Yeah,
you.
they tell you, but they don't. It's like gaslighting.
What is in you, and
Yeah.
what do you do with that? There's no step two to it. It's exactly that. It's like, no, let's turn the spotlight back on.
Yeah.
It is kind of like gaslighting, but that's sort of how the New Age movement is built, is
Yeah.
it creates a lot of, circular thinking that doesn't really get you anywhere.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Do you know what, Sam? It's been really good speaking with you. I knew it would be. And there's going to be so much content in here to unpick.
Two or three of these, Joanne, we haven't even touched on some of the others.
I know, I know, I know, I know, I know.
We're not gonna
Yeah,
be-
we could do a follow-up. I always ask two questions at the end of every podcast, and they're kind of getting outdated now because of the type of guests that I've gotten here, but I have to think of some different ones. But I'm gonna ask you anyway. If you could go back in time to any version of yourself, I mean, of course, we know we can do this already, right? If you could go back in time to any version of yourself and you could give yourself a message from this viewpoint, what you're at now, I understand you probably wouldn't want to change something, but what would you say? What message would you give yourself and when?
So you hit the head of the nail right there. I imagine you wouldn't want to change anything. So here's what I'll say to that. I've already given myself the messages.
Yeah.
That version of me that was saying the truth shall set you free is probably a future version of me that's
Yeah.
telling you that.
Yeah. Yeah, obviously, like without beyond a shadow of a doubt.
So
But
I've
no,
already given myself those messages. But
yeah,
what I can say is that if you were listening to this
yeah.
and you want something that helps you to keep going, I mean, this is the message I would give you if you're listening. And I'll give you an example. Okay, so the buffalo, right? This was how this story came about was very interesting. But the buffalo, we may have heard the story as well. When there's a storm that's coming, the buffalo, they find the eye of the storm and they walk towards it. Okay. And what they do is they cut the storm in half. The length of the storm for them gets cut in half because they find the eye, they find the direction that it's coming, and they just walk towards it. And so if you want to cut your storm in half, what do? Well, find the direction that it's coming at and just walk towards it. You don't need to run, but just walk towards it, and you will cut that storm in half. That's what I would tell you.
You've just answered my next question. I think you've just answered it. And that is maybe your future self let you know. That is, if you could give any message whatsoever to the viewers, bearing in mind I explained who would be watching this. So the
Yeah.
corporate person, um, got a week of work ahead, know there's something different to life. If you could give any message, or even, somebody who's just living a life that's not true to themselves, like I was 6, 7 years ago, what message would you give?
So what I would say is a clarification. What I would clarify to you is that you're not broken. There's nothing in you that's broken. You yourself were made exactly as you're meant to be. There's nothing wrong with any of that. The only part that you need to see is what's not you. And by seeing what's not you, you recognize what has always been you.
Mm, mm. Right. Well, I'm sure that people can contemplate on that. That's a contemplation one there, right there.
Yeah. I wanted to say that just because I don't know if this has came up in others' lives, maybe this is part of a larger scheme, but the word like
Yeah.
fixing, like I don't want to be fixed. There's
Yeah.
nothing to fix. It's
Nothing.
just a remembrance. We're
Yeah.
just trying to remember who we are and why we came here and what here is.
And sometimes I wonder, was that all by design anyway? The childhood, was this part of the game?
100%.
Yeah.
This is why the first question of, what would you change or what message would you give? For me, the story's already written. I'm
Yeah.
watching it.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
like that.
Podcast is already started.
That I like that, Sam. Thanks. As always, it's been brilliant speaking with you. And who knows, we might meet in person again. We might do another podcast. Let's see what happens.
Down your way and
Glastonbury.
forwards with Merlin.
Come to Glastonbury and experience the frequency of Glastonbury.
Mm, yeah. Thank you, Joanne.
Thanks, Sam. Thank you.